Morning.
What's up? And welcome to Jericho Church Without Walls Online. I want to invite you to join us Sunday mornings at 10 a.m. on Facebook Live and our YouTube channel. There, you'll have an opportunity to engage in powerful worship, experience the power of prayer, and also receive a word from our pastor, Dr. A.D. Burns, that will surely empower you to live your best life for God. Please take a moment to follow our socials to learn more about the many ways you can stay connected. Hope to see you soon at Jericho Church Without Walls Online.
Hello, my name is Garland Smith. Most people know me as G, owner of G's Clippers. What does fatherhood mean? A great deal of responsibility, a great deal of instilling as much as I possibly can in the offspring that I brought into this world. It's a major responsibility, I feel, as a man, to ensure that his son or his daughter are just great contributors to society. And that's why I take my responsibility as a father extremely serious. A father figure that I looked up was actually my father, my blood father, Garland Smith Sr. The only time I ever heard my father tell me he loved me in my adulthood life, or even teens, was when the doctor said he had to be transferred to hospital. That's how I try my best to tell my son almost every single day that I love him, and I think that that's what's missing in a lot of fathers. He is who instilled all the hard work ethic in myself and my brothers and sisters. I mean, just by us watching him. My father owned Smith & Sons Home Improvement and drove in Milwaukee County Transit for about 25 years. He's really instilled a lot of hard work. More so us watching him rather than him sitting down telling us, but he was a great father. I dearly miss him, and I'm trying to do what he did for me and son. And I hope that each and every one of you guys out there brought a life into this world. You guys take it serious. Take it very serious because you have a responsibility. That child did not ask to be here. You brought it here.
When I think about fathering, I think about a legacy. I want to leave something that expresses who I am and who I was as a man. Having a daughter changes a man, and it definitely changed me a lot. I realized and I asked myself that question, would I be comfortable with my daughter being with someone who was just like me? And I couldn't answer that question with a yes. So I made a promise to myself until I can answer that question with a yes, I'll do everything that I can do to be in a position to be there for her and also my wife. Just to advocate for a healthy relationship, to have empathy and communication and balance, to give my daughter an example of what a relationship looks like. As a father, we can spend a lot of time doing nothing. I want to spend a lot of time creating memories because memories do matter. I was asked a question about my family history and fathering. I had a great father for a large portion of my upbringing until I was like 16 years old, and I learned a lot. So family history does matter. Having a father does matter. But just because we don't necessarily have fathers doesn't mean that that's an excuse for us to continue that legacy of not being present and active. So if you're that person out there who didn't have a father or a positive father figure, use that as the fire or the motivation to say, I didn't have this, but I want to give it.
The involvement that I had with my father, I had none. My parents both died before I was 6 years old. My grandfather, who was an alcoholic, took care of the family, and he took care of me until I was 12 years old. I was angry at the world, I was angry at God, because I saw all of these other people growing up with parents having all these things that we thought were important. I wanted to know, why didn't I have those things? So I lashed out at society as a whole because of what I thought I missed. And I did a lot of bad things to a lot of good people. But over the years, I learned that there's another task for me somewhere. I'm still here because my work is not done yet. I was disenfranchised from my children in 2 marriages, but although their mother and I divorced, I contacted and stayed involved in my children's lives as much as I possibly could. We have helped thousands of fathers have better contact with their children. We have helped them get rid of a lot of government debt in child support and in other entities, fines, fees, etc., so that they can readdress their finances to better help their children and their families. I encourage everyone to come to the Milwaukee Fatherhood Summit. I am one of the original people who created it here in the city, and it is a blessing to many because of all of the agencies that come together to offer services free to the community, and then we carry on that work through My Father's House Incorporated.
Fatherhood to me has been like the greatest gift that I can ever wish for, even being a part of. What it has done to me has grown me as a man, has grown me as an individual. You know, one thing that I did realize is that we are a children's reality show. I had my son at the cusp of my 17 years on this earth. You know, I had stepfathers. I never knew my biological father. I've just really seen a picture of him 2 years ago. What I've noticed is that my son became my little brother. I didn't look at him as a son. So everything that I was doing at that time, I was selling drugs, I was gangbanging, and before I knew it, I was of age and got mature, and I got that phone call because his mother was living out in Arizona, and it was like, Dad, you know, I'm in jail. I said, you know what? You in jail? What you in jail for, son? I was just trying to get it in like you, Pops. And that was just like a spear in my heart, because it's like I gave that part of society the key to the cell by letting here being just that type of model for my child.
I'm Richard Badger. I am proud to say that I'm one of the founders of the Milwaukee Fatherhood Initiative. And so today I'm going to be talking to you about why I think fatherhood is important. First, let me say that I'm the father of 8. We have a blended family. I've been married for 13 years to my beautiful wife. To me, fatherhood is important because we really validate
I'm doing
the value
well.
of our
You know what,
children.
Pastor Burns? I'm going to have
If we
to
say that our
what's
children
on
are
the
great,
screen
our
so
children
it's
take that as the
there.
gospel. And so
All
I
right.
think
You
children,
want to just call me
they
late for
get
dinner?
that embrace, that physical touch, that physical love and nurturance
All right,
from their father. I
Good
think
morning.
it just goes leaps
It
and
is
bounds into their
also,
confidence,
again,
into their
my
self-esteem,
highest
into their
honor to
self-worth,
thank you
because
for
I really think that we define
today,
our children's
and
value.
we absolutely appreciate
Mothers are great cheerleaders, but I think we're the validators as fathers. And there's no minimization between a mother and a father. We both should be equal in raising our children. And being a father is not
All right.
about
That's how we like to do
it's
it.
not
That's
about
how we
child
like to do
support.
it.
Being a father is about time.
All right. I don't
It's
think
about
I
putting
know
that time into your
everybody,
children. It's
but
about putting that love into
I'm
your
gonna just call
children.
them out.
Every
Richard, how
father
you
that I've
doing,
ever
sir?
talked to over the years, the
doing quite
one
well,
thing I
Pastor.
always
Looks
tell
like I
them
need
is
to adjust my
don't
lighting
get
in the
caught
house.
up
Go ahead
with
and go off
the
video
child
real quick.
support argument, the child support debate, because you'll never win. When you love your children, when you have quality access to your children, when you spend time with your children, there's no amount of money that's too much to show your appreciation for your child. The Milwaukee Fatherhood Initiative and the summit actually supports fathers really putting that time within the 2-day summit. And that's really kind of what it's been centered around. The different services that are offered, whether it's driver's license recovery, helping individuals find jobs, or working and helping them with their child support issues that they may have. That really is just the tip of the iceberg. When it's all said and done, every man that comes to the Fatherhood Summit over the last 11 years come because they truly have a love and an appreciation for
What's
this.
going on, Senator Taylor?
Hey, your lighting, Daryl.
Wait a minute. What you say?
We can't see you at all.
What's up? And welcome to Jericho Church Without Walls Online. I want to invite you to join us Sunday mornings at 10 a.m. on Facebook Live and our YouTube channel. There, you'll have an opportunity to engage in powerful worship, experience the power of prayer, and also receive a word from our pastor, Dr. A.D. Burns, that will surely empower you to live your best life for God. Please take a moment to follow our socials to learn more about the many ways you can stay connected. Hope to see you soon at Jericho Church Without Walls Online.
Hello, my name is Garland Smith. Most people know me as G, owner of G's Clippers. What does fatherhood mean? A great deal of responsibility, a great deal of instilling as much as I possibly can in the offspring that I brought into this world. It's a major responsibility, I feel, as a man, to ensure that his son or his daughter are just great contributors to society. And that's why I take my responsibility as a father extremely serious. A father figure that I looked up was actually my father, my blood father, Garland Smith Sr. The only time I ever heard my father tell me he loved me in my adulthood life, or even teens, was when the doctor said he had to be transferred to hospital. That's how I try my best to tell my son almost every single day that I love him, and I think that that's what's missing in a lot of fathers. He is who instilled all the hard work ethic in myself and my brothers and sisters. I mean, just by us watching him. My father owned Smith & Sons Home Improvement and drove in Milwaukee County Transit for about 25 years. He's really instilled a lot of hard work. More so us watching him rather than him sitting down telling us. You know, but he was a great father. I dearly miss him, and I'm trying to do what he did for me and son. And I hope that each and every one of you guys out there brought a life into this world. You guys take it serious. Take it very serious, because you have a responsibility. That child did not ask to be here. You brought it here.
When I think about fathering, I think about a legacy. I want to leave something that expresses who I am and who I was as a man. Having a daughter changes a man, and it definitely changed me a lot. I realized, and I asked myself that question, would I be comfortable with my daughter being with someone who was just like me? And I couldn't answer that question with a yes. So I made a promise to myself to, until I can answer that question with a yes, I'll do everything that I can do to be in a position to be there for her, and also my wife, just to advocate for a healthy relationship, to have empathy and communication and balance, to give my daughter an example of what a relationship looks like. As a father, we can spend a lot of time doing nothing. I want to spend a lot of time creating memories, because memories do matter. I was asked a question about my family history and fathering. I had a great father for a large portion of my upbringing until I was like 16 years old, and I learned a lot. So family history does matter. Having a father does matter. But just because we don't necessarily have fathers doesn't mean that that's an excuse for us to continue that legacy of not being present and active. So if you're that person out there who didn't have a father or a positive father figure, use that as the fire or the motivation to say, I didn't have this, but I want to give it.
The involvement that I had with my father, I had none. My parents both died before I was 6 years old. My grandfather, who was an alcoholic, took care of the family, and he took care of me until I was 12 years old. I was angry at the world. I was angry at God, because I saw all of these other people growing up with parents having all these things that we thought were important. I wanted to know, why didn't I have those things? So I lashed out at society as a whole because of what I thought I missed. And I did a lot of bad things to a lot of good people. But over the years, I learned that there's another task for me somewhere. I'm still here because my work is not done yet. I was disenfranchised from my children in 2 marriages, but although their mother and I divorced, I contacted and stayed involved in my children's lives as much as I possibly could. We have helped thousands of fathers have better contact with their children. We have helped them get rid of a lot of government debt in child support and in other entities, fines, fees, etc., so that they can readdress their finances to better help their children and their families. I encourage everyone to come to the Milwaukee Fatherhood Summit. I am one of the original people who created it here in the city, and it is a blessing to many because of all of the agencies that come together to offer services free to the community, and then we carry on that work through My Father's House Incorporated.
Fatherhood to me has been like the greatest gift that I can ever wish for, even being a part of. What it has done to me has grown me as a man, has grown me as an individual. You know, one thing that I did realize is that we are a children's reality show. I had my son at the cusp of my 17 years on this earth. You know, I had stepfathers. I never knew my biological father. I've just really seen a picture of him 2 years ago. What I've noticed is that my son became my little brother. I didn't look at him as a son. So everything that I was doing at that time, I was selling drugs, I was gangbanging, and before I knew it, I was of age and got mature, and I got that phone call because his mother was living out in Arizona, and it was like, Dad, you know, I'm in jail. I said, you know what? You in jail? What you in jail for, son? I was just trying to get it in like you, Pops. And that was just like a spear in my heart, because it's like I gave that part of society the key to the cell by letting here being just that type of model for my child.
I'm Richard Badger. I am proud to say that I'm one of the founders of the Milwaukee Fatherhood Initiative. And so today I'm going to be talking to you about why I think fatherhood is important. First, let me say that I'm the father of 8. We have a blended family. I've been married for 13 years to my beautiful wife. To me, fatherhood is important because we really validate the value of our children. If we say that our children are great, our children take that as the gospel. And so I think children, when they get that embrace, that physical touch, that physical love and nurturance from their father, I think it just goes leaps and bounds into their confidence, into their self-esteem, into their self-worth, because I really think that we define our children's value. Mothers are great cheerleaders, but I think we're the validators as fathers, and there's no minimization between a mother and a father. We both should be equal in raising our children. And being a father is not about money. It's not about child support. Being a father is about time. It's about putting that time into your children. It's about putting that love into your children. Every father that I've ever talked to over the years, the one thing I always tell them is don't get caught up with the child support argument, the child support debate, because you'll never win. When you love your children, when you have quality access to your children, when you spend time with your children, there's no amount of money that's too much to show your appreciation for your child. The Milwaukee Fatherhood Initiative and the summit actually supports fathers really putting that time in, and within the 2-day summit. And that's really kind of what it's been centered around. The different services that are offered, whether it's driver's license recovery, helping individuals find jobs, or working and helping them with their child support issues that they may have, that really is just the tip of the iceberg. When it's all said and done, every man that comes to the Fatherhood Summit over the last 11 years has come because they truly have a love and an appreciation for their children.
What's up? And welcome to Jericho Church Without Walls Online. I want to invite you to join us Sunday mornings at 10 a.m. on Facebook Live and our YouTube channel. There, you'll have an opportunity to engage in powerful worship, experience the power of prayer, and also receive a word from our pastor, Dr. A.D. Burns, that will surely empower you to live your best life for God. Please take a moment to follow our socials to learn more about the many ways you can stay connected. Hope to see you soon at Jericho Church Without Walls online.
Hello, my name is Garland Smith. Most people know me as G, owner of G's Clippers. What does fatherhood mean? A great deal of responsibility, a great deal of instilling as much as I possibly can in the offspring that I brought into this world. It's a major responsibility, I feel, as a man, to ensure that his son or his daughter are just great contributors to society. And that's why I take my responsibility as a father extremely serious. A father figure that I looked up was actually my father, my blood father, Garland Smith Sr. The only time I ever heard my father tell me he loved me in my adulthood life, or even teens, was when the doctor said he had to be transferred to hospital. That's how I try my best to tell my son almost every single day that I love him, and I think that that's what's missing in a lot of fathers. He is who instilled all the hard work ethic in myself and my brothers and sisters. I mean, just by us watching him. My father owned Smith & Sons Home Improvement and drove in Milwaukee County Transit for about 25 years. He's really instilled a lot of hard work. More so us watching him rather than him sitting down telling us. You know, but he was a great father. I dearly miss him, and I'm trying to do what he did for me and son. And I hope that each and every one of you guys out there brought a life into this world. You guys take it serious. Take it very serious, because you have a responsibility. That child did not ask to be here. You brought it here.
When I think about fathering, I think about a legacy. I want to leave something that expresses who I am and who I was as a man. Having a daughter changes a man, and it definitely changed me a lot. I realized, and I asked myself that question, would I be comfortable with my daughter being with someone who was just like me? And I couldn't answer that question with a yes. So I made a promise to myself to, until I can answer that question with a yes, I'll do everything that I can do to be in a position to be there for her, and also my wife, just to advocate for a healthy relationship, to have empathy and communication and balance, to give my daughter an example of what a relationship looks like. As a father, we can spend a lot of time doing nothing. I want to spend a lot of time creating memories, because memories do matter. I was asked a question about my family history and fathering. I had a great father for a large portion of my upbringing until I was like 16 years old, and I learned a lot. So family history does matter. Having a father does matter. But just because we don't necessarily have fathers doesn't mean that that's an excuse for us to continue that legacy of not being present and active. So if you're that person out there who didn't have a father or a positive father figure, use that as the fire or the motivation to say, I didn't have this, but I want to give it.
The involvement that I had with my father, I had none. My parents both died before I was 6 years old. My grandfather, who was an alcoholic, took care of the family, and he took care of me until I was 12 years old. I was angry at the world. I was angry at God, because I saw all of these other people growing up with parents having all these things that we thought were important. I wanted to know, why didn't I have those things? So I lashed out at society as a whole because of what I thought I missed. And I did a lot of bad things to a lot of good people. But over the years, I learned that there's another task for me somewhere. I'm still here because my work is not done yet. I was disenfranchised from my children in 2 marriages, but although their mother and I divorced, I contacted and stayed involved in my children's lives as much as I possibly could. We have helped thousands of fathers have better contact with their children. We have helped them get rid of a lot of government debt in child support and in other entities, fines, fees, etc., so that they can readdress their finances to better help their children and their families. I encourage everyone to come to the Milwaukee Fatherhood Summit. I am one of the original people who created it here in the city, and it is a blessing to many because of all of the agencies that come together to offer services free to the community, and then we carry on that work through My Father's House Incorporated.
Fatherhood to me has been like the greatest gift that I could ever wish for, even being a part of. What it has done to me has grown me as a man, has grown me as an individual. You know, one thing that I did realize is that we are a children's reality show. I had my son at the cusp of my 17 years on this earth. You know, I had stepfathers. I never knew my biological father. I've just really seen a picture of him 2 years ago. What I've noticed is that my son became my little brother. I didn't look at him as a son. So everything that I was doing at that time, I was selling drugs, I was gang banging, and before I knew it, I was of age and got mature, and I got that phone call because his mother was living out in Arizona, and it was like, Dad, you know, I'm in jail. I said, you know what? You in jail? What you in jail for, son? I was just trying to get it in like you, Pops. And that was just like a spear in my heart, because it's like I gave that part of society the key to the cell by letting here being just that type of model for my child.
I'm Richard Badger. I am proud to say that I'm one of the founders of the Milwaukee Fatherhood Initiative. And so today I'm going to be talking to you about why I think fatherhood is important. First, let me say that I'm the father of 8. We have a blended family. I've been married for 13 years to my beautiful wife. To me, fatherhood is important because we really validate the value of our children. If we say that our children are great, our children take that as the gospel. And so I think children, when they get that embrace, that physical touch, that physical love and nurturance from their father, I think it just goes leaps and bounds into their confidence, into their self-esteem, into their self-worth, because I really think that we define our children's value. Mothers are great cheerleaders, but I think we're the validators as fathers, and there's no minimization between a mother and a father. We both should be equal in raising our children. And being a father is not about money. It's not about child support. Being a father is about time. It's about putting that time into your children. It's about putting that love into your children. Every father that I've ever talked to over the years, the one thing I always tell them is don't get caught up with the child support argument, the child support debate, because you'll never win. When you love your children, when you have quality access to your children, when you spend time with your children, there's no amount of money that's too much to show your appreciation for your child. The Milwaukee Fatherhood Initiative and the summit actually supports fathers really putting that time in, and within the 2-day summit. And that's really kind of what it's been centered around. The different services that are offered, whether it's driver's license recovery, helping individuals find jobs, or working and helping them with their child support issues that they may have, that really is just the tip of the iceberg. When it's all said and done, every man that comes to the Fatherhood Summit over the last 11 years has come because they truly have a love and an appreciation
Morning, everybody.
Good morning, Mayor.
How are you doing?
Awesome.
Morning.
You all set to start?
Yes, sir.
Well, I'll get the ball rolling here. Well, I want to welcome everybody. I'm Mayor Tom Barrett, and I couldn't be more pleased that we are once again celebrating fatherhood in Milwaukee. As some of you know, this has been a passion of mine back to my days in Congress when I first got involved with the fatherhood issue. And unfortunately, I think we all recognize with the pandemic, we're unable to meet in person this year. But we felt it was very, very, very important that we continue to go ahead and have our annual Fatherhood Summit. So this is actually the 15th anniversary of the Milwaukee Fatherhood Summit. And along with myself, we're very, very pleased to have Daryl Davidson, Terrence Ray, Richard Badger, and Tyrone Dumas, who will all be making some opening remarks. And in some ways, this is like bringing the band back together because so many of these men have been involved in this for literally decades. And so it's great to have this little reunion as well. So I want to welcome everybody back. I actually first got involved, as I said, when I was a member of Congress, and Terrence Ray, who's on the phone call with us today, was a member of my staff then. And he was certainly an advocate then, as he remains an advocate today. And when I became mayor of the city, it was a natural selection that he would be leading our efforts. And so we've had some very, very dynamic chapters. I'm sure Terrence remembers when we were able to have the incredible partnership, for example, with the Brewers and the airline, where we took annual trips to places like St. Louis and Minneapolis, where we were given a plane, and we had lots of fathers and their sons and daughters who made that trip. But the real thrust behind all of this is connecting with dads here in Milwaukee on the ground. And to me, this is not and has never been a theoretical exercise. This has always been, what can we do to help fathers be better fathers? And so ranging from issues like child support to driver's license to jobs to healthcare, we have tried to make sure that the tools that men need to help them become better fathers are available to them. And so our partnership with the county, in particular the Office on Child Support, has been critical to a lot of the work that we have done. Our partnership with many organizations in the city really, I think, becomes even more important as we move forward. But I want to reinforce the theme of this year's summit: Black Lives Matter, the intersections of injustice. And as time has evolved and so much has been happening in our country, in our world, in our community this year, with the pandemic, with the economic tsunami, with the fight for racial justice, it does come back to Black Lives Matter. And when I hear someone say, well, we should say all lives matter, my response is, you can say all lives matter after you can say, literally, Black Lives Matter. You must be able to say Black Lives Matter if you believe that all lives matter. And I think that is where some people have a stumbling block, and why it is so important that we continue this effort to reinforce that Black Lives Matter. Today, the panel will discuss the importance of fatherhood and how fatherhood intersects with the solutions in reducing various disparities. Just this week, and I've talked about my dad in the past, just this week, I became older than my father when he passed away. My dad was 66 when he passed away, and I'm 66. And I just literally in the last few days, and I say that because every day since my dad died almost 31 and a half years ago, I've thought about him every single day. Without a doubt, the most important man in my life. And the fact that he has not been with me for 31 and a half years, and I still think about him, tells you the impact that his presence had on me. And sometimes I think we don't realize that, how much of an impact we have on the sons and the daughters that we brought into this world. So the panel discussion will be related again to the importance of fatherhood and how fatherhood intersects with solutions in reducing various disparities. And I think it does have a big part in that. So on behalf of the city of Milwaukee, I am very pleased to have the opportunity to extend this welcome to all the participants. Again, this is an incredible team effort. My office has been very involved. Marcy Patterson is on the call. Sharon Robinson has been very involved, but Marcy's been the one who's really been pushing from our office. BMAC has been a critical partner. The City of Milwaukee Department of Administration. Again, Milwaukee County continues to be a very strong partner on this effort as well. The United Way, Milwaukee Public Schools, Mentor Greater Milwaukee, and others as well. So I want us to recognize that we have connected more than 12,000 men to services in the areas of education, employment, job training, child support, driver's license recovery, and men's health services since 2006. 12,000 men is a lot of men to connect, and I'm very proud of the work we've done. So I encourage every father taking part in this year's summit to take full advantage of the tools and resources available to them. So Daryl, I'll turn it over to you. And again, thank you all very much for being with us today.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Mayor, for that awesome welcome this morning. I just want to say I'm Dr. Anthony D. Burns here at Jericho Church Without Walls in Milwaukee, and we want to welcome you to our Jericho Studios virtual platform this morning. And so it is our prayer that, first of all, everything would operate in the way that it's been designed, and secondly, that the fathers' lives would be impacted, and thirdly, that the investment that we're making in the lives of people today will be lasting. And so we welcome you. And so I'm going to turn it over to our moderator, Daryl Davidson, and at this time. Thank you.
And Reverend Dr. Anthony Burns, I greatly appreciate the services that you've offered with Jericho Church Without Walls. This is an exciting experience for us as we move into the technological age. Welcome everybody to our event. I'm Daryl Davidson, the director of the Milwaukee Fatherhood Initiative, and we are here not only to celebrate the 15th anniversary of the annual Fatherhood Summit, which was an amazing event that we absolutely missed this year, but we are gratefully looking forward to it in the future. But we do want to talk about some of the things that are happening in this country. This nation has been changing greatly, and we want to make sure that many of the people out there know that they can make a difference just as well as we're making a difference. So part of this conversation is going to address what types of success we've seen in the past, as well as many of the challenges. But I certainly do want to acknowledge what's happening as we move into the future, and some of the ideas, some of the theories, some of the plans, the agencies that are involved. And certainly we do want to acknowledge everybody, and I mean everybody, who's been a part of the Fatherhood Summit as clients, as partners, as planners, as supporters, as advertisers, as board of directors members. We've had a great run, and we certainly believe that we've got 15 more years ahead of us. So with that being said, what I want to do is turn this panel into a reality. We have a great number of people who are on this call right now, and I want to introduce you to the essential people who made the Fatherhood Summit happen in the past and in the present. So please turn on your cameras, gentlemen. So as we open up our panel, what I'd like for everyone to make sure to do is introduce yourselves as we address our questions. The first person that I want to have speak is Terrence Ray, the first director of the Milwaukee Fatherhood Summit, as well as the first director of the Milwaukee Fatherhood Initiative. Terrence, what memories 15 years later stand out the most for you?
Okay. Good morning, Daryl. How are you? Wow, that is a very interesting question. Well, first, let me greet you all from the Lone Star state of Texas. I am in Houston, where it is 78 degrees. I'm going to bring some of that back to Milwaukee with me, for sure. To your question, man, there are a myriad of memories that I have. But if there was one that stood out, it had to be the fact that in establishing the Milwaukee Fatherhood Initiative, we actually started on the foundation that was set by the Milwaukee Fatherhood Collaborative with Al Holmes and Bishop LaHarve Buck. And we took that momentum and literally ran with it. But I think the cornerstone was the fact that it was very important to us to have the impacted population, if you will, the men that we were serving, that they played a role in designing the organization. So the men that were impacted, sat on the various committees and, helped us come up with the design of the overall organization. And the other thing that stands out to me is over the course of the 15 years that the event, our signature event, the summit was held, I think you often hear changing the narrative. And I think we actually started that back then because over 15 years of having that summit where thousands of men were brought together under one roof, particularly Black men. We never had one single disruption, if you will, not one issue of discontent, because like the saying, if you build it, they'll come. That's actually what we did. We let the men build it and explain to us what they felt they needed to help them be better dads. And we built around that. And over the course of 15 years, man, we had just a spiritual kind of summits where men came together and just embraced each other. You could feel the love in the room because men were getting what they needed. So I think it had to be the fact that men played a role in the development of the MFI and the fact that they came together in harmony to help each other.
Thank you, Terrence. I really appreciate that answer, and I want to turn it over to Mr. Richard Badger. Let's find out what his perspective is.
Well, good morning, everybody. Again, my name is Richard Badger. I'm one of the founding members of the MFI. Like Terrence, I also served on the Milwaukee Fatherhood Collaborative. What's funny is, although this is the 15th summit, the initiative itself is 17, 18 years old. So there was work that went in years prior to the summit kicking off. The summit was truly the culmination of a lot of work and research that went in prior to the actual event itself. Like Terrence said, with the collaborative, Brother Al Holmes and Bishop Buck were putting in a lot of work. And one of the things I want to point out is that when the collaborative was extremely active, there were somewhere 20-something, almost 30 different fatherhood programs at that time. And so over the years, those programs faded away because funding started getting cut and everything like that. So fatherhood became almost a second, even a third tier issue as far as community involvement and resources went. But when we started having a conversation and discussion about the MFI and what we wanted to do, I think one of the core goals was to make the city of Milwaukee itself a more father-friendly city. What we were realizing is that there was a lot of anger and hostility that was coming from our brothers, and we needed to find out if this anger was legit, if it was self-imposed, or if it's systemic. And what we ultimately found out is that it was more systemic than anything else. And so, over the years, we've been able to cultivate the relationship with the Child Support Enforcement Agency, the Driver's License Agency, but then also, cultivate the brothers by empowering them with the information and knowledge and wherewithal to be better fathers, all the while making the city of Milwaukee a more father-friendly city. So, here it is 15 years into the summit. A lot of conversations that we hear in the barbershop today is that although it's not perfect, the process itself, the system itself has gotten a lot better than what it used to be. And so anybody who's gone through, the family court system, child support, or what have you, I think most would agree that the system has gotten much better, and that can only be directly attributed to the work of the Milwaukee Fatherhood Initiative, the summit, and everybody over the years who have touched it. You know, so a lot of genuine brothers have been at the table, and let's not leave out the women who have been in support of the Milwaukee Fatherhood Initiative, because one of the things we found out early in our research is that most men get their information and are essentially kind of pushed and motivated by the women in their life, whether it's their mother, their significant other, their wife, what have you. You know, so the activity of the brothers that participate in the MFI, if it's not court ordered, a lot of times they got that information from a woman in their life. So, you know, I want to definitely tip my hat to the women who have been advocates for this fatherhood movement. But definitely, I want to say publicly, Terrence Ray, thank you for having the gumption to do something like this that was not seen prior to. And then to Mayor Tom Barrett, you know, thank you for standing with Terrence Ray and allowing your platform to be the gateway to this happening. So there's a lot to talk about. I look forward to the discussion, and I will pause right there.
Well, of course, thank you, Mr. Badger. And Richard, we had to leave this without thanking you also for the hard work that you put in. As we all know, you just went ahead and did whatever kind of assignment that was available, and you didn't even ask any questions. You made it happen. So again, I do appreciate the work that you put into this, as well as the other planners, including Mr. Al Holmes, Mayor Barrett's work that went into this, Tyrone Dumas. Absolutely, the captain of the ship during that period was Terrence Ray. I do want to turn this over to Curtis Marshall for the next question, and we're going to twist it a little bit, because not only do I want to find out what memory stands out from the annual summit, but Curtis, in your mind, what difference did it make?
Oh, what difference does it make? Well, anyway, so I mean, I'm glad to be here, you know, and I'll be very honest, you know, and open. And I got to give my baptism into fatherhood was connected with Terrence Ray. Some of you may know that, you know, I do work for the Division of Public Health for the State Public Health Department, and at that time, a lot of my work was focused on infant mortality in Milwaukee, and I would attend meetings in Madison around why so many Black babies in Milwaukee were dying, and where was the fathers? Because at that time, fathers were not at the table and looking at how fathers really impact infant mortality and birth outcomes. And I never forget that day in Madison. I was at a meeting and someone said, "Well, you need to connect with Terrence Ray in Milwaukee with the Milwaukee Fatherhood Summit Initiative." So I came back to Milwaukee and I looked up this Terrence Ray, and he and I connected. And I connected with Terrence Ray after a lot of the front end work was done in identifying fatherhood as an issue in Milwaukee. So I connected with Terrence right at the time they were just beginning to plan and seek partners to pull together a fatherhood summit. And somehow, someday, I don't know how it happened, but I was given the role as the program chair for the Milwaukee Fatherhood Summit. And I really think that really changed a lot of my perspectives on fathers and the issues that fathers and the barriers that fathers that men just deal with in connecting and being there, you know, for their families. And so, but it's one thing that really caught my attention about this whole issue around fatherhood in Milwaukee and the initiative is that in identifying partners to really come together and pull this sum together, because I was a program chair for like 7 years, right? In talking and reaching to partners, I realized that there was a lot of interest. I mean, I think it was just a lot of interest that was like bridal, you know, within these agencies across the spectrum, regardless if you were a health agency, a social service agency, a family agency, an agency working in corrections or whatever. There was a lot of pent up energy in Milwaukee because these agencies realized that fathers had basically been discarded or disenfranchised. And they saw the benefit of having fathers involved in programs that they rendered, you know, to families and children and women, because again, they saw how that could really benefit them and that they need to be at the table. So there's one thing that really stood out is that regardless, we had a program committee meeting, if we had a full MFI summit planning meeting, we would have weekly over 50 to 60 individuals from all across the table really interested in being part of the summit and helping to identify programs and speakers and themes and all of that. So I think that because of the MFI, it just really did just raise the level. It really elevated, the attention and the need across all spectrums, regardless if you were a professional or a layperson. It really just did kind of bring that whole issue to the point, that the forefront, that fathers are important across the spectrum in every regard, to their kids, their families. So I think that, the MFI, the summit, it was more than just a resource fair. The whole summit was a resource fair. It was programs that really engaged men to exchange their ideas and their concerns and what their solutions were and what they needed to help them to be better fathers and dads.
And I'll concur with you, Curtis, on that one. And as a matter of fact, I got to commend you for many of the great ideas that you brought to the Fatherhood Summits over the years. And as a matter of fact, one specifically that I remember that was unique and was talked about nationally, because this Fatherhood Summit was one event that nobody else had been able to replicate. But it was when you made a push toward addressing mental health. And the work that you did with that was extremely memorable. And I know that it was very instrumental in making sure that the subject of mental health in men was on the cutting edge. And let's not have anybody be fooled. This was not just the people who you see on the screen. There's many numerous individuals who were part of planning and did the work. We had the men's health referral networks. We had the people who brought the jobs to us. We had the individuals who made sure that you had the barbershops were coordinated so they could do haircuts. We had interviews on the spot, the child support representatives, as well as driver's license renewals. We had a lot of people, SDC and their programs were there. And also SDC was a partner for many of the years and brought some great planners onto the team that were essential in making sure that it was not only a success, that we found locations, and we also were able to formally acknowledge grandfathers too. So what I like to do is turn this next part of the question to Shannon Reed. Shannon, not only your memory and what difference did it make to host this event, but your involvement with what's happening with this now.
Oh, thank you, Daryl. And, just hearing all the information, we have to, really, if we want to pay attention to the future, we have to look back at history. And so thinking about all of the folks who have paved the way for, as I get a chance to sit in this seat and have seen some of the things that have already been laid. And so I want to say thank you to everyone, not only on the screen, but even all of the hands that we don't know who were a part of it. Shannon Reed, the Director of Innovative Strategies for Boys and Men of Color at United Way of Greater Milwaukee and Waukesha County. And how I came into this, I remember having a conversation with even some of the folks here, Keith, who was a great partner in this work, and me being a part of the Black Male Achievement Advisory Council. And this work really brought me into what was going on, being around the work when we talk about creating resources for the men in our community. United Way is a big proponent of trying to make sure that folks have the right resources at the right time. And we can't do it all. And I think that's one of the major things and things that I think about when we talk about building fatherhood. I can remember being at Destiny High School is where I remember. And I can remember going back and forth to the places and hearing, young, men coming in saying, oh, I need to get child support. Do I really have to wait in this line? And I can remember Keith, directing folks and telling them this is where you need to be and this is where you need to go. But they were looking for the resources and we had those. And those are things that I remember that distinctly sticks out to me when we talk about trying to help the fathers in our community. And it takes all the hands. And I think people sometimes forget, like, they see faces, right? And they ask questions about, oh, so you do this. And it's like, yeah, it's me, but it's probably like 20 other people behind me that's really pushing these efforts forward. And so it's been a great way for not only United Way to be in the space, but for us to collaborate and bridge what happens, once again, not only in our community, but for the fathers in our community as well.
Thank you, Shannon. And over the years, I mean, we've had so many partners who hosted this event, including, the Daniel Centers and St. Marcus, as you mentioned, Destiny. We had so many people who made this thing happen, and I'm really grateful.
Daryl, can you hear me?
The activities that took place to make this a reality. Yes, sir. Go ahead, Terrence.
I to that point you just made, I think I'd like to add on something that Curtis mentioned with respect to, structurally and everybody that was involved. I have to definitely give credit to the National Fatherhood Initiative, because it was at the time they called it their community mobilization model. And it was designed to bring non-traditional sectors of society to the table. And what they meant by non-traditional sectors, as you were alluding to earlier, as Curtis was alluding to earlier, non-traditional sectors in that folks who weren't traditionally involved in discussing the issue of fatherhood and its impact on society, where prior to the establishment of the summits, where you didn't have the healthcare community, you didn't have the business community. It was primarily the social service sector of society that focused on the issue of fatherhood and father absence. So that's how we were able to have, as Curtis mentioned, upwards of 50 to 60 different entities at the table during the planning of this, as opposed to just the social service community. And then also the women, Richard mentioned the women. We actually did a survey. Curtis put a survey together asking the men, how did you hear about the Milwaukee Fatherhood Summit? And of the respondents, 95 to 98% of the respondents indicated that their mother, aunt, some woman in their life told them about the summit. And I just think that's, as Richard mentioned, a credit to the role that women played overall in the establishment of the Milwaukee Fatherhood Summit.
Thank you for that. That's extremely important, Terrence. And that's also a model for how many other organizations may be able to work collaboratively and have some success in impacting their own communities across the country. In this particular virtual world, we don't just restrict our information to Milwaukee and Wisconsin. We know that this can be transmitted not only through the nation, but also internationally. And some of the things that we're saying tonight may be very relevant to assisting and making sure that we have some strong communities everywhere. And part of that effort was also because of the types of services and programs and even the philosophies that these Milwaukee versions of them had. So I'd like to turn this over to Keith Paris. Why don't we hear from him about what types of things he remembers over the 15-year period, but also I want to hear what services, programs, and opportunities exist that fathers may not even know about. Unmute, Keith, unmute.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Now, again, I don't have the 15-year history. I have actually a 10-year history. It's funny sometimes how life is. Some people are very direct, and then sometimes you just fall into something. What happened with me was that I just had to go to the meetings to represent child support. And that was my initial introduction to the Milwaukee Fatherhood Summit in particular. Let me do this. Let me also do an acknowledgement to Lisa Marks, who was the Director of Child Support Services. And then, of course, Chris Abley and Jim Sullivan. Uh, Without them and their support in terms of allowing child support staff to come and to be a part of this, I think that obviously we all knew that that was the draw, that a lot of men came there because of child support issues. It was fascinating because at the same time that I got involved 10 years ago was the same time then that Milwaukee County received a Pathways grant, which was a program that was really dealing with three core areas when it came to dads. It was, yes, that's correct, John O'Shea. Thank you very much, Terrence. That we dealt with economic stability, we dealt with parenting issues, and then we dealt with relationships. And it just fit kind of hand in glove with what was going on with the Fatherhood Summit. We have now, and I know MFI, Milwaukee Fatherhood Initiative, will continue the Pathways program for this upcoming fiscal year. And Milwaukee County just received a grant, which is similar to the Pathways program, which is the RISE grant. And we'll be working with community agencies here to really develop dads. My first memory, Shannon, was being at Destiny, and the level of chaos that usually goes along with this, and then our ability to be able to work through that in terms of being able to flow them in. And but one of the things, and when people start talking about these efforts, one of the things when people are doing grants or other type of things, and you're evaluated, attitude is an outcome that's measurable. And to see the attitude of the men once they walk in, and then when they walk out, again, I represented I can remember being introduced. I didn't even have a first name or a last name. I was the dude from child support. And depending on where you were, there could be some real hostility. One of the things that came up was that we had developed this Child Support 101, which was basically getting men to understand how the child support system works. A lot of times there's a lot of emotion involved in it because that's money coming out the check. There's issues with the mom. And so that Child Support 101, and again, let me give two people really credit for that. There was John O'Shea and a young man now who is a court commissioner out in Jefferson County, Brian Hartley, who put that together. And what we were able to do was to really give people an understanding of how to navigate this system and to give them information on how this system is based on laws and not your. And so it was one of those things. And I think our perception changed, even our name changed during this period, because prior to this, we were child support enforcement. We became child support services because we began to look at a more holistic approach to this, not just the enforcement piece or the collection piece, but what can we do to help develop men. I heard you all mention Bishop Buck. And I remember Bishop Buck doing a presentation many, many years ago talking about the importance of men taking a fatherhood development class. And he said he took a class and he went home and immediately apologized to his kids because he said, I realized all the mistakes I made. His kids said, oh, you were a great dad. He was going, no. So fatherhood is a learned behavior. Being a father is learned behavior. We're not naturally fathers. We have to learn how to do that. And I think that the Fatherhood Summit did a lot to begin to get people to kind of look at it a little bit differently. We didn't use the term that you were a bad dad. We always talked about that you could be a better dad. So that was my memory. And to be able to do it for the last 10 years and not be able to do it in person this year is really kind of disappointing. But I really want to do the shout out to all the folks, Terrence and all those folks who sat there. And sometimes those planning meetings can be pretty difficult, but usually at the end of it, we turned out a very good product. So.
And you're right, Keith. Turning out a good product is what fathers do too, because fathers are there when they're engaged. They are strengthening families, strengthening communities, but every father is not going to know how to be a father from birth. And that's the reason why we do have those programs and services specifically for fathers. And we look forward to any type of supports that exists that can allow those fathers to know what their power is and what their strength is so they can pass on to their children.
Hey, Joe, can I make one quick observation too? What I really appreciated was just the organic nature.
Yes, sir.
I would continue to evolve organically. And I'm looking at Shannon, and I was talking yesterday, there was a whole thing on Sunday is Safe Baby Sabbath, right? And one of the things that United Way did, because we did male engagement when it came around the issue of infant mortality, was we just talked about the fact that they gave us swag bags to give to the guys. And we were having a whole discussion about the importance of dad's roles prior to the baby getting here, and then that postpartum period. It was things like that where we expanded discussions, not that people just come there and get your child support straight or deal with your driver's license, but to look at it in terms of there are other things, in terms of you probably didn't even know you were doing these things as a dad, which was really positive, and really beginning to accentuate that and support that so guys could walk out of it feeling a little bit better about themselves than when they walked in.
Well, I do want to make this, thank you, Keith. I want to make this next section kind of free flow anyway, because there's some important information that often gets missed. And so this year, with our Boys and Men of Color Week, which Fatherhood Summit has traditionally been at the end of Boys and Men of Color Week. Fatherhood Summit, of course, is older than Boys and Men of Color Week because it's in its 7th year this year, but it's an essential part and relationship to what we're trying to do in the Milwaukee area. But I am curious, and anybody can answer this question. We're talking about the intersections of injustices. So where do fathers fit in with the solutions? And also, what may be missed as far as data and collecting information where people are absolutely missing how fathers are substantial to our society? Who wants to take that one?
Well, Daryl, if I can start out, if I can just kind of flip the script on this, but I think it's important that we look at fatherhood. I think personally for me, fatherhood, is social justice. As a matter of fact, my opinion is fatherhood is the greatest form of social justice because what you're doing, you are providing things, for your child, for your son, your daughter, or whomever, that they cannot provide for themselves, right? And then the better a father does that, then the better that child will be, as an adult. And then if it's done very well, then when people see that, then it permeates out into the communities and other young men, they want to replicate that. So I think that we do everything as a parent, as a father, everything that we do. I can think of a whole list of things that we do that are very, very similar to social justice. So then when we do that, when we raise our kids, when we provide for them well and set them on the path, to success, in whatever area that may be, it does come back and it opens their eyes and it opens their minds to see the world, in a way that they can be part of making a change and teaching others to be, better parents and fathers as well.
And
so I think that's all part of changing the narrative. So when you talk about fathers and the intersection, it doesn't always have to be an intersection of injustice, but an intersection of social justice.
Right. And can I piggyback on that?
Go ahead, Terrence.
Yeah, to Curtis's point, changing the narrative in that if we begin to not look at fatherhood through negative lenses and connecting it with deadbeat dads and not paying child support and begin to look at it through positive lenses and begin to celebrate the role of fatherhood, because that's Keith mentioned something earlier about how it just was organic, the organic nature of experiences he had. And if I'm going to toot my own horn here, my passion behind the whole starting this thing had to do with the birth of my own daughters. And we started out on a track where we wanted to celebrate the role of fatherhood. But because of the negative narrative, it literally evolved into a thing where we were helping and focusing on so-called broken dads. But I think if we begin again to celebrate the role, the importance of the role of fatherhood, you know, we can begin to change the narrative and have and look at fatherhood from a positive standpoint. We can begin to have a positive impact on social justice.
And I think that was some of
it is that that it was the village. And the more and more I looked at that, when you start talking about all these entities who came together, it was the village's responsibility as it relates to, because we talk about the dads, at some point we have to talk about the children. And so what was our level of responsibility in terms of the beloved community, and what fathers are a part of that. But I think that understanding that I had a role, I am not a natural father. You know, I'm what they call an earth father, but I still have a role in that in terms of the village, because the entire village is responsible for raising children, you know? And so I think that that was what I got from it as much as we could feed into men and get them to be, again, I've used this term again, holistically, how do you holistically look at yourself as a man and then as a father, and then using that and taking away the term when we begin to talk about your level of personal responsibility. That was something that the right was able to co-opt, but we understand that. And then one other quick piece, to get men to understand that if you can't provide financial support, there's still emotional, spiritual, and a physical presence to help develop your child or children.
But see, Keith, kind of piggybacking on that, we talk about the village. That was some of the thinking behind the plan and bringing in and honoring the grandfathers, because again, the MFI, you know, we made we had a whole program just to recognize and celebrate grandfathers. And when those grandfathers came to their event, you know, to get recognized and celebrate being a grandfather, then they brought their wives. And so we had grandfathers and grandmothers and dads, and I mean, the whole shebang, you know, at the summit. And that's the village, because again, that's the legacy. And so these were individuals, these young men could see and say, wow, you mean they worked at A.O. Smith and they did this and they raised their kids and they sacrificed, and they're still involved in the lives of their kids. So again, the village was important. So we just made a keen interest, just not to focus in on the dads for the duration of the summit, but to recognize the village as a whole.
And can I add one more piece? I want to go back to something that Terrence said about when we talk about deficit-based and asset-based. When we talk about this language of fathers, I think when it comes to Black fathers, right, there's a discussion that happens that we're not there. And I think that's the narrative and the language that we have to make sure we are more securing language around, asset-based language around that. Black fathers are there.
Yeah.
They are in the home. They are showing up. They are going to their sports for their children. And it just looks different. And I think in order for us to really have a better conversation with our community, they have to understand that Black fathers are there. And once again, I know sometimes we remove these things, and I want to make sure we think about Black women who are holding spaces, but Black fathers are showing up, and Black fathers are in spaces. And so I want to make sure when we talk about that we are there. We are trying to make sure that, you know, we can provide, that we can be that family man that we need to. And within this, we're still on a learning journey. We don't know it all. And we're still looking at even some of the partners that we have on the screen, like who are we looking to in order for us to be that better father, to get some more tools to learn. So I want to make sure when we talk about that language that Black fathers are there, Black fathers are in the spaces, and they are doing what they can to provide for their families.
And in addition to that, I think I want to add something where I evolved personally over the course of these 15 years. And the reality is that you cannot have fatherhood without motherhood. And the discussion needs to be broadened. As important as fatherhood is, and you know how we get together as men and handle the fatherhood issue, there has to be a recognition that you can't have one without the other, and the role that mothers play. You know, even when we talk about relationships and how men should treat women, that the discussion has to be had simultaneously about the role that women play. and things like co-parenting and the importance of
Yeah.
co-parent and the role that the changes that have the traditional family has gone through, and again, like Curtis mentioned, the very important role of grandparents. I mean, it's important to talk about granddads, but grandmama play a important role, and the changes that grandmothers have gone through over the years. So understanding the importance of the role that mothers play in fatherhood.
So let me kind of jump in real quick. One of the things I want to make sure we don't forget is that fatherhood in and of itself is not just a Black thing. One of the things that I've learned over the years is that a lot of our white brothers have experienced just as much, because initially we were talking about how the system was just basically beating us up. So I want to definitely make sure that we the MFI has always been an all-inclusive organization. It's been about fatherhood in general, but today what you see is a lot of Black fathers, because that's really been those who have stepped up. But to your point, Daryl, or to your question, Daryl, I think that fathers are validators. I think we validate the self-worth and the self-value of our children. And so I think, moms are known as the nurturers, and mom says everything's going to be all right. And I think a lot of times children, I think we've all been there, well, mom is supposed to say that. But for some reason, when dad says it, man, it's considered law, and so dad says, tells your daughter that you're beautiful, she could take that to the bank. If you tell your son that he's smart and that he's strong, he's this and that, you can take that to the bank because dad said it. So I think we're the validators of our children's self-esteem and their self-respect and their self-worth. Additionally, I think fathers play an invaluable role with community development in the sense that when men are around and when men step up, we can't control our own environment. And so like Terrence opening statement, when he talked about, we've never had any issues that happened at the summit, that's because men checked on each other. It's not to say that there was not emotions happening at the summit, but brothers stepped up and said, hey, man, this is not the time for this. And so brothers stepped up and they controlled their environment to make sure that they wasn't going to lose something good. And so, to your question, how does fatherhood affect the bigger picture? Fatherhood affects the bigger picture because men affect the bigger picture. If men are absent, a lot of stuff will happen because we're not there to control those things. We're not there to train and discipline those things. When we're present, the data will always support. When men are present, when children have quality access to both parents, they're going to be more productive in all facets of life. And so we just really have to continue to perpetuate that information, that narrative, that fathers have an intrinsic value that you can't necessarily put a price tag on. When we're there and when it's a quality amount of time and it's a quality relationship, our children will perform better. If our children perform better, that will leak out into the community, that leaks out into the school, so children get a better education. Our communities are safer. Our children have a better foundational social development as they grow up, all because of a quality relationship with their father.
I think it's the other piece of that too, is the how you're there. I think that's what Shannon's talking about. And the ability to understand that you're a presence there. So your choice now is, what type of presence do you want to be? And then what do I need to do? If I'm going to be a basketball player, I'm going to put the work in I need to do to be the best player I could possibly be. And so you have to have this paradigm shift in thinking that men a lot of times to say, well, how can I be a better dad? It's that point that Bishop Buck was making, that he was a good dad, but that didn't mean he couldn't be a better dad. And I think that when we do that and we do it in such a way that we reinforce that behavior, or the fact that men come together and they have this commonality in terms of their experiences, and to be able to do that. So I think that those things become important in terms of what the emphasis is, and again, how we've expanded that discussion via the summit on what does it take then for you to be the best dad, to be a better dad, right? And so I agree with you. And then the data shows that when Black men specifically, they're more involved on a lot of different levels, even though they are, as we say in the business, They're co-parenting without cohabitating.
Yes, great point, Keith.
You know, and I
But
think
I
the other
think
piece
another
of it
point
is
to be
just,
made,
Can I
Daryl,
add a empirical kind of piece of evidence to exactly what Keith and Shannon were saying? Everyone knows about the daddy-daughter dance, right?
Oh yeah.
When we got involved with NPS recreation, we meaning the MFI, when we initially got involved with them to do the daddy-daughter dance, I can't remember, and Richard, help me out, please. Cedric said when Cedric and those guys were doing the daddy-daughter dance, they were holding it.
That's right. Yeah.
They were holding it at North in the lunchroom, and it started out in the lunchroom. When the MFI got involved in it, they moved it that very first year. They moved it to the field house, and you guys know from visual, I mean, you could see the transformation and how it got bigger and better every year. And we just brought those two entities together, and the thing exploded to where it is now. I mean, it literally fills up the field house at North Division, and I think that's a perfect example of, you know, being involved and the asset-based kind of thing that Shannon was mentioning, because I mean, this thing literally blew up in the field house.
Well, let me also add this too, Terrence, because what you're also referencing is working with systems, and that system change at that level. Milwaukee Public Schools, recreation, as well as other parts of our society that made a difference in how children and their fathers related to each other. I know that in the fatherhood summits, it wasn't a situation where somebody had a warrant and then the police or the sheriff could come in and arrest that person. I remember Mr. Al Holmes from my father's house, having specific conversations with people so that that type of thing would not happen. I remember you making a strong push, Terrence, so that we could have child care, approved child care, recognized licensed child care at some of those summits. That's how I started getting my children to the summits, and my children attended every single summit from that point forward. At least they showed up for a short period every year. So they never missed a summit, just like I never missed a summit. So extremely important. I'm going to turn this over to Curtis, because I want to know about this intersections part more. Wealth building, economics, housing discrimination and how it affects families and relationships, as well as how do you build a future in this environment that we're dealing with right now? We're living literally in a virtual environment where even people like ourselves who would have put together a service-oriented and a magnificent event like the Fatherhood Summit, we even are impacted in how we deliver information and meaningful services to people. Curtis, would you like to speak to that?
Well, Daryl, you and I have had this conversation. I do a lot of work around health equity. And now I think we need to move. I mean, we need to really look at how economics drives health equity. So I talk about health equity now, in the terms of restorative health equity. And what restorative health equity is connecting that whole economic piece. I mean, that whole wealth building piece, to health equity. Because again, without a strong economic, without wealth, then poor housing and good health and access to good education and this and that, I mean, that would never become a reality without really building and addressing the whole economic piece. Now, you may recall during the Democratic primary season, right? Then all the candidates were talking about reparations, right? Okay, fine. So then people are thinking, well, reparations, in the context of a monetary payment, I mean, which would really help build wealth among descendants of slaves, right? But see, that's only a very small piece of it. So when we talk about, building economic, wealth and closing the, the economic gap and equity, right, and reparations, it's more than just money. It's more than just a person getting a check. But look, how can we change the systems? How can we change the systems that have really marginalized and suppressed, individuals, particularly men, from living the best quality of life that they can? So again, that whole piece around, reparations and economic and change, and that's a very small part of social justice. So again, reparations is part of social justice, but when we talk about health equity or reparations in the context of health equity, that would really help move that that discussion forward. So again, it kind of goes back to closing the wealth gap. Terrence and I, we've had many conversations about that, and how even though we did bring that piece, at the summit, how can men, take their skills, their interests, and what they do every day, as a side gig or whatever, how can they use that and put some infrastructure around that to really help them to become independent, businessmen, to have control, over, how much they make and how they spend their wealth and how they save their wealth, and all of that. So again, that piece, it really drives everything. Closing that wealth gap, it drives improved housing, it drives improved transportation, education, just, across the social determinants overall.
Thank you, Curtis. And the order will be on this one because this will be answered in this order that I'm given, and then we're going to go into our final comments. So I'd like to hear first from Shannon, and then next it'll be Keith, then it's Richard, and then it's Terrence. Go ahead, Shannon.
So one of the things that, and can you, I'm sorry, can you give me just a little bit of the ending of the question?
Oh, what we're talking about is with all these changes, we have essentially a virtual society now. So I'm going to paraphrase. Yeah. So I want to talk about what is not being explored, and what can make a difference in the future here.
Well, I mean, I think one of the things, and I saw a question about COVID-19, right? And I think we need to also say what that is doing to our community, right? So I think one of the important pieces is that when we think about the pandemic that we are in, we were in one before the coronavirus came, right? So when we think about, the racial equity and how that put us in and the things that we all are dealing with. And I think, for us, even at United Way, right, we're thinking about employment. Now, we know right now that folks are losing their jobs, not by the hundreds, not by the thousands, but by millions. And so, one of the things that we've decided to do under the reducing barrier strategies and advancement at United Way is we're hosting specific things that we can help folks get back into the workspace. Now, once again, this is, our hands are reaching through our collaborations with our different partners. So, when we think about building up our community, even in COVID-19, right? We're hosting sessions. We just did a session with Goodwill Industries along with our collaborating partner with Manpower. And we held a session around resumes, like updating your resumes, getting some of those skills that you haven't thought about on paper. And then we're going to host another session. It's going to be a 30, 60, 90. The 60 session that we're going to have. And all of this information is on our website too at United Way, GMC, gmwc.org. And we're going to be hosting a session on virtual interviewing. So those are things that we understand, even in COVID-19, we have to pivot, but we also have to make sure that we're providing opportunities, access, resources for the folks in our community. And how we pivot in that is just like we're doing right now. As I heard someone say earlier, it would be great for us to be in person, but we can't. And so the only way we can do that is we have to go where people are. And I think we have to remember that in every opportunity, in every access, and every resource. We're not always going to be inside of a building. We may have to go to the neighborhood. We may have to go into the community. We may have to knock on doors. And I think that's one of the pieces, when you say, how can we help? Those are things that we can do. And we have to be collaborative. This is not a one size fit all. It's for all of us to figure out how we do that, how we manage it, and how we help our community.
So I'll go ahead and jump in because Keith is off the call. He had to get back on the air. So yeah, I concur 100% with what Shannon said, and I'll try to add some fruit to what he's mentioned. As it pertains to this new virtual society that we live in, the one thing we have to do is think about our health. We got to stay healthy. One thing about Black men is that we tend to find ourselves in unhealthy predicaments, whether it's diabetes, obesity, hypertension, what have you. You know, we lead in all categories as Black people normally do. So with COVID, there's really been no difference in that. You know, America gets the cold, we get pneumonia. So, you know, we now are relegated to this virtual society. What I would encourage fathers to do is understand that our role and our involvement is not just in a physical way. You know, there are a number of ways that fathers can be engaged with their children, with their families as a collective, but also engage with their community. And so one of the things I definitely want to talk about is something I've been working on for almost 10 years, which is legislative reform. Everything that we're talking about, you know, the Fatherhood Summit was a response basically to the conditions that a lot of fathers were experiencing. And although things have gotten somewhat better, you know, legislatively, things are pretty much still the same. And so what I would encourage fathers to do is, November 3rd is election day. So definitely want to make sure everybody goes out and vote. If you haven't voted already, make sure that you go out and vote before or on November 3rd. But also remember that you're not just voting for the president. You're voting that down ballot is what's going to hit home the most. And so locally, there is a legislative think tank that has been working to push legislation that would, I would say, correct or at least level out, you know, some of the stuff that we're talking about, whether it's child support, whether it's child placement orders. You know, there's all those things are legislated through the state. And so what I would encourage fathers to do is, one, find out what the legislation says, and two, get involved, find out, you know, what this legislative team is doing and talking about, and get involved with that process, you know, and also remain involved with the MFI. But that legislative piece is critical, because what you're doing on the legislative side, if we can start to change this legislation where we to be more equal for fathers, what we're doing is we're protecting our sons and our daughters in the future. You know, it may be not going to directly impact us ourselves, but we definitely want to leave the society much better than when we received it. So I would say talk to your state legislators, your state representatives, your state senators, and ask them to support, you know, different legislation once you get the information. Don't just, you know, arbitrarily start calling State Senator Lena Taylor, say, hey, I want you to support, you know, whatever fatherhood legislation is out there. No, find out what the legislation is. I will say, for the record, State Senator Lena Taylor has been not just a vocal advocate of fathers in the community, but she's been a vocal advocate in the state house. And so it's advocates like her and others that we need to continue to support going down the road, you know, but we tend to remove ourselves as a people. We tend to remove ourselves out of the legislative process. The political process, voting is one thing. The legislative process is something entirely different. And the legislative process is more of a marathon than a sprint. And so we need those brothers and sisters to be involved in this thing for the long haul, not just to correct your situation, but to correct the situation of everybody that's coming behind you. And so I definitely want to encourage folks that if they want to learn more about what some of the legislative agendas are, definitely feel free to give myself, you can reach out to me. You know, Wisconsin Dads is a great organization to reach out to. Reach out to State Senator Lena Taylor's office, not to her directly, but to her office, and find out, you know, what kind of stuff that her office is working on as it pertains to fatherhood related legislation. And I think that's a great way to be engaged, have your hands, fingers on the pulse, and still protect yourself from this COVID experience right now that we're going through.
And to Richard's point about the legislative angle, if you will, I do want to personally give Senator Taylor a shout out, because, I mean, she was a quiet supporter and advocate of providing assistance way back when she played a significant role in bringing the Nurturing Fathers program to the state. So I just wanted to give her a personal shout out. to the question, I mentioned non-traditional earlier when as it relates to the National Fatherhood Initiative, and I think as we move forward, we really need to look at a non-traditional approach and having an impact. And specifically, what I mean is a shift from that because of technology, a shift from the wage earner perspective, if you will, because of technology and the opportunity that young people and particularly young fathers have to make some money, we have to look at non-traditional approaches to have an impact on these fathers economically. And again, the traditional wage earner mentality where you work a job for 30 years and you may get a gold watch at the end of it, those days are over. Young people are making money hand over fist on the internet. Now, and Shannon used the word pivot earlier, that we may have to pivot as it relates to things like soft skills and explain to a brother that, you can't be in your underwear on a Zoom call. However, if he has a skill technologically and there's an opportunity where he can make some money, then that's where we come in and help and assist him with, advancing his brand, if you will. But I think there has to be a shift, where we're more economic based and providing opportunities for these young brothers as it relates to fathers to make some bread. Because if you're not talking about putting some money in their pocket, particularly in this virtual world, they're not trying to hear you. So again, I think moving forward, my focus is going to be, economically based or financially based. And lastly, before I just want to give a personal shout out to Pastor Burns at Jericho for providing this platform for me, and say that you guys need to stay tuned for some new and exciting things coming up out of Jericho Church Without Walls.
And before we wrap up, if I could just say one thing quickly. One, I want to definitely give a public shout out to Judge Derek Mosley for the driver's license recovery program that he's been instrumental in providing each and every year of the summit. And then lastly, Bishop Cedric Daniels, Holy Redeemer. The first two summits happened at Holy Redeemer.
Yes.
And I think one thing to end this on a kind of note, the reason why we're at the 15th year of the summit right now is because the first summit that was held at Holy Redeemer, we had planned for, and Terrence, I'm sure you're going to remember this. We had planned for around 400 people.
Yeah.
And so all the program materials and everything, we had 400 packets. I think we even had 600 packets.
Right.
We got there, when we got to Holy Redeemer to prepare for the summit, there were over 600 people waiting on the summit to start. And by the end of the summit, and this is the first summit ever, by the end of the summit, we had over 1,600 people. What that did for us was that affirmed to us that fatherhood is a real issue and that it has been neglected for so long that now that we've introduced it, everybody's trying to get a hold of it before it goes away again.
Yeah.
And so we're at the 15th summit right now because of the 1,600 people that responded to the first summit.
Yeah.
Fatherhood was an issue before the first summit happened, and it continues to be an issue today.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that the summit has continued to go on. I'm glad brothers are continuing to respond to the summit. I'm glad that we're now into a generation of fathers that have gone through, and now unfortunately we've seen some fathers and sons at the summit at the same time. I say that to say the summit is here. I pray that it's here to stay, but the need for the summit is great. And the 1,600 people, the 1,600 men that were served that first year is a true testament to how significant fatherhood is. And to the point that I've raised about us being prepared for 400 to 600 people, God made a way for us to be able to deliver packets for everybody who came through that summit. We were not equipped for it, but when greatness occurs and when things are supposed to happen, things will happen. And so the faith that we all had at that table, at that planning committee table, was truly that event was truly ordained.
Yeah.
That first summit was truly ordained because nobody left there unfed.
And
so those would be my last words.
And
okay,
Richard,
hang on, Terrence. Terrence, you gotta get one more chance on this, but I'm gonna get ready to start closing out, brother. So hang on. You will be up. Those are gonna be Richard's last words, ladies and gentlemen. But I do want to add this to what Richard just said, which I highly respect where you went with that on the first summit. And I'm going to say that people were mad at me because I got rid of all of my program materials on that first Fatherhood Summit day. Like literally my entire supply of program materials I was handing out, it was gone. So I guess that's a good problem to have. But I just want to put it out there for the audience. If you want to imagine an entire year's supply of educational materials and models and things, all gone. So that being said, let me start getting ready to close this out, everybody. And certainly the brothers on this panel, you've been outstanding in the work that you've been doing past and present. And I'm looking forward to working with you again in the future. I would be remiss if we did not name, Baba James and late sister Avis Nichols and Diane Robinson had some great hardcore, great workers who helped us, Natasha Dotson, who helped us with that grandfather's event. We also want to acknowledge the Greater New Birth Church, if they didn't get mentioned before, MATC, and Dr. Walter Lanier, which is where we had the Fatherhood Summit last year. And certainly everybody else who did not get named, please know, it's not that you were forgotten. You got us here too. And we want to make sure that even if your name was not called, you are a part of this beautiful history and this great legacy moving forward. So that being said, everybody, you get 3 minutes because Keith is no longer with us here. So everybody gets 3 minutes now for the finale. We're going to go in the order of my screen. The first one who's going to speak is Shannon Reed.
Well, once again, Daryl, it's been a pleasure to be a part of this this call, and just thinking about, once again, I think history has a way of really giving us a really great indicator of what our future will be. And I think it's important for us to, as brothers that are on this call, but other brothers who are part of this fabric that is built, that we try our best to do everything we can to build not only all the resources we can, but that we do this work collectively and collaboratively. And I guess my last few words will be, I know we're all doing work in our spaces, and it's important for us to, whatever you all can do around this time right now. We know this is voting season. Please take someone to get them to vote and wear a mask. Please wear a mask. And so I think it's important for us to reach back, even if you're not going somewhere, make a phone call, do a phone call tree, and just tell people to go vote. Please go and vote. And then the only other thing I would say is we have some work at United Way that we're trying to build. There's going to be some great work coming out of there where we're going to be affecting over 25,000 young Black and brown boys nationwide, that we're going to get them to universities. It's going to be a part of the work under what I do under the Boys and Men of Color portfolio. And we're also doing work of, we understand that we're in this employment situation right now because of what the coronavirus has given us. And we want to try our best to help each and every individual get back to work in some way, shape, or form. And I think to what Terrence Ray said earlier about non-traditional, some of us aren't going back to a building. So we need to figure out how we're going to build our skills, whether it's from an IT lane, whether it's from wherever the work will take you. You're going to have to learn to do something different. And it starts now. We're in the space to do it, and you can do it. Shannon Reed, my email address, if you want to send me something, is sreed at sreed, United Way, gmwc.org. And the last plug I will say, we are doing resume, interview skills, success and work. 2 things, November 17th, please sign up. You can go to our site once again, United Way, gmwc.org. We're also going to be doing some work around success and work on December 9th. Please get your people there. Once again, Daryl, thank you for letting me be a part of this space. And I appreciate each and every one of you that are on this call. And if no one told you today, I love you and you can't do anything about it.
Blessings to you, my brother. We're going to turn it over to the Reverend Dr. Anthony Burns, our gracious host. We thank you so much for getting us here on this channel, Reverend Burns.
Well, listen, this has certainly been enlightening to hear the history and to see the impact that you've made. And I would say that the times, even though we are in a different times, we're still faced with the same giants. And so it's going to take some not only radical movements in order to be able to make an impact, but I believe it's going to take some relevant movement as well. And so I just congratulate you all. And as we continue to press forward, we certainly have to stay on the front lines, because I don't know if it's going to go away. It's embedded in our culture, and I think it's going to become part of our agenda if we're going to be successful as a people. So thank you for allowing me to be a part, and that's all I have.
Graciously, we accept your humility. And also, I want to make sure that everyone knows Jericho Church Without Walls is also in an online community, and that we want to make sure that if you are interested in visiting and learning more, you can find the Jericho Church Without Walls. It's there for you. I then want to turn it over to my Captain Kirk, to me being Captain Picard, El Capitan, Terrence Ray. What do you have to say? Unmute, Terrence.
You're on mute.
Thanks, Daryl. And I want to give a shout out to you, man, for embracing the discussion to, include the fatherhood piece and coordinating all of this, man. But I wanted to go back to the volunteers for the summit. And again, it actually takes me back to the women, the role that women play, because Faith Colas, when she was over at the Salvation Army, if it had not been for Faith and the volunteers that she brought from the Salvation Army, man, a lot of that wouldn't have happened. So I just got to give a shout out to Faith, man. And then the other thing, Richard mentioned the 1600, but it was the second year of the summit that really got me going, because after the 1600, we planned the second year for 1600. And then to Richard's point about it put fatherhood out there, we got 2,700 men the following year. And that just let me know as the director that we were really on to something. So, just thinking about the impact over the years, it has just been phenomenal. And then lastly, when I think about the places that we've held the summit, there's always been a spiritual component. And then we've held these events at churches. And now with, my involvement with Pastor Burns over at Jericho, it's just a continuation of that. And I want to leave you all with a quote from late night talk show host Stephen Colbert. And, you can take from it what you will, but it just left a profound impact on me as it relates to fatherhood and the role that fathers play. And again, please embrace it in the space that you are. It says a father has to be a provider, a teacher, a role model. But most importantly, he has to be a distant authority figure who can never be pleased. Otherwise, how will children ever understand the concept of God? And with that, thank you, Daryl, and everyone else involved in this, people I didn't mention. I'm just blessed to have been in a place where, I don't know, people have identified me as, the leader, but I do this really because of my daughters, man, and the blessing that I have in being a father. And so I'm going to continue to do that. So thanks again, Daryl, and to everybody involved in this, man. This really hit home, and I had a ball doing it.
Right back at you, my brother. So I do want to acknowledge a couple of other people, because I know it's one of those quiet as it kept moments, but let's not forget some of that other excitement we had with bringing these individuals here and celebrating them at the Fatherhood Summit. And that would include Michael Redd's dad, former Milwaukee Buck Michael Redd. We had Chris Garner, Sidney Moncrief, George Foreman. We had David Banner. We acknowledge the relationship between the daddy-daughter dance, Sincere. That was like the last time we were in that North Division cafeteria. Sincere was in there with us. So we had a great run. We had an outstanding run. And I want to make sure that people recognize that all of those great nationally known presenters, they just wowed the audience and took it home with that message about the importance of fatherhood and dedicating your life to something more important than yourself as an individual. And because of that, we do have still going on our Boys and Men of Color Week, everybody. So I want to make sure that you don't just turn off this YouTube channel and just hang out and do nothing. We still have another event going on starting at 11:30 this morning, so very soon. Switch that channel over to the next Intersections of Injustice opportunity. This one is going to be the movie being hosted by Milwaukee Area Technical College Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Project. So if you go to MATC, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Project, go to their webpage at the MATC website, you'll find that there's a discussion for the movie, One Angry Black Man. It's one of the films that would be able, you can purchase it on YouTube for $3.99, but that discussion starts at 11:30 this morning, and it certainly is relevant to many of the topics that we had discussed today, as well as through this entire week. I absolutely want to thank everybody on this panel, as well as our gracious hosts, as well as the Jericho Church Without Walls. I don't know where I would be without the support that I get from many of the people in the community, especially these dedicated, hardworking, instrumental individuals that I'm looking at on this screen right now. So please, if you need to know more about what's happening in Milwaukee, these are the people to go to. As far as it goes with Milwaukee Fatherhood Initiative, if you have any questions about fatherhood and you want that information from the Milwaukee Fatherhood Initiative, the area code 414-286-5653 is the number. If you're trying to get to me, Daryl Davidson, my telephone number, my email address is david@milwaukee.gov. That's david@milwaukee.gov. And I absolutely can't leave this broadcast without mentioning the people of Boys and Men of Color Week who made this entire week happen. It's a tireless group of hardworking individuals who put in a lot of time and commitment and unashamedly are humble about it because it takes a lot of work, but they're not bragging about it. They just want to make sure that people get what they need. So that would include Officer Mayor Tom Barrett, the Black Male Achievement Council, Alderman Hamilton, City of Milwaukee Department of Administration, Milwaukee County Office of African American Affairs, United Way of Greater Milwaukee and Waukesha County, Milwaukee Area Technical College, Milwaukee Public Schools, Black Latino Male Achievement, Mentor, the organization, Greater Milwaukee University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee, Milwaukee Area Technical College Schools Partnership, Milwaukee Community Schools, a collaboration between United Way and Milwaukee Schools, RGM Consultants, Jericho Church Without Walls, Black Lens Milwaukee, MSBPICO Fitness, Sky Schools Milwaukee. That's a lot. There's many more, and we certainly look forward to you working with us next year. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to close out a little bit early because we want to make sure that you can get over to that MATC website so you can take a look at the film, One Angry Black Man. Again, you must go to the MATC, Milwaukee Area Technical College website, and then click on Milwaukee Area Technical College Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Project. That's where you'll find the registration, and that's where you have the link so you can get on that discussion. It's a Zoom link. So please, have a blessed weekend, and we enjoy everything that you're about. And don't forget, fatherhood is not just something that you are, Fatherhood is something that you make, and it's beautiful. And if you want beauty, just like with any art project, you got to put in the time to make it a masterpiece. Everybody have a blessed week. So long.
What's up? And welcome to Jericho Church Without Walls Online. I want to invite you to join us Sunday mornings at 10 a.m. on Facebook Live and our YouTube channel. There, you'll have an opportunity to engage in powerful worship, experience the power of prayer, and also receive a word from our pastor, Dr. A.D. Burns, that will surely empower you to live your best life for God. Please take a moment to follow our socials to learn more about the many ways you can stay connected. Hope to see you soon at Jericho Church Without Walls Online.
Hello, my name is Garland Smith. Most people know me as G, owner of G's Clippers. What does fatherhood mean? A great deal of responsibility, a great deal of instilling as much as I possibly can in the offspring that I brought into this world. It's a major responsibility, I feel, as a man, to ensure that his son or his daughter are just great contributors to society. And that's why I take my responsibility as a father extremely serious. A father figure that I looked up was actually my father, my blood father, Garland Smith Sr. The only time I ever heard my father tell me he loved me in my adulthood life, or even teens, was when the doctor said he had to be transferred to hospital. That's how I try my best to tell my son almost every single day that I love him, and I think that that's what's missing in a lot of fathers. He is who instilled all the hard work ethic in myself and my brothers and sisters. I mean, just by us watching him. My father owned Smith & Sons Home Improvement and drove in Milwaukee County Transit for about 25 years. He's really instilled a lot of hard work, more so us watching him rather than him sitting down telling us. You know, but he was a great father. I dearly miss him, and I'm trying to do what he did for me and son. And I hope that each and every one of you guys out there brought a life into this world. You guys take it serious. Take it very serious, because you have a responsibility. That child did not ask to be here. You brought it here.
When I think about fathering, I think about a legacy. I want to leave something that expresses who I am and who I was as a man. Having a daughter changes a man, and it definitely changed me a lot. I realized, and I asked myself that question, would I be comfortable with my daughter being with someone who was just like me? And I couldn't answer that question with a yes. So I made a promise to myself to, until I can answer that question with a yes, I'll do everything that I can do to be in a position to be there for her, and also my wife, just to advocate for a healthy relationship, to have empathy and communication and balance, to give my daughter an example of what a relationship looks like. As a father, we can spend a lot of time doing nothing. I want to spend a lot of time creating memories, because memories do matter. I was asked a question about my family history and fathering. I had a great father for a large portion of my upbringing until I was like 16 years old, and I learned a lot. So family history does matter. Having a father does matter. But just because we don't necessarily have fathers doesn't mean that that's an excuse for us to continue that legacy of not being present and active. So if you're that person out there who didn't have a father or a positive father figure, use that as the fire or the motivation to say, I didn't have this, but I want to give it.
The involvement that I had with my father, I had none. My parents both died before I was 6 years old. My grandfather, who was an alcoholic, took care of the family, and he took care of me until I was 12 years old. I was angry at the world. I was angry at God. because I saw all of these other people growing up with parents having all these things that we thought were important. I wanted to know, why didn't I have those things? So I lashed out at society as a whole because of what I thought I missed. And I did a lot of bad things to a lot of good people. But over the years, I learned that there's another task for me somewhere. I'm still here because my work is not done yet. I was disenfranchised from my children in 2 marriages, but although their mother and I divorced, I contacted and stayed involved in my children's lives as much as I possibly could. We have helped thousands of fathers have better contact with their children. We have helped them get rid of a lot of government debt in child support and in other entities, fines, fees, etc., so that they can readdress their finances to better help their children and their families. I encourage everyone to come to the Milwaukee Fatherhood Summit. I am one of the original people who created it here in the city, and it is a blessing to many because of all of the agencies that come together to offer services free to the community, and then we carry on that work through My Father's House Incorporated.
Fatherhood to me has been like the greatest gift that I can ever wish for, even being a part of. What it has done to me has grown me as a man, has grown me as an individual. You know, one thing that I did realize is that we are a children's reality show. I had my son at the cusp of my 17 years on this earth. You know, I had stepfathers. I never knew my biological father. I've just really seen a picture of him 2 years ago. What I've noticed is that my son became my little brother. I didn't look at him as a son. So everything that I was doing at that time, I was selling drugs, I was gangbanging, and before I knew it, I was of age and got mature, and I got that phone call because his mother was living out in Arizona, and it was like, Dad, you know, I'm in jail. I said, you know what? You in jail? What you in jail for, son? I was just trying to get it in like you, Pops. And that was just like a spear in my heart, because it's like I gave that part of society the key to the cell by letting here being just that type of model for my child.
I'm Richard Badger. I am proud to say that I'm one of the founders of the Milwaukee Fatherhood Initiative. And so today I'm going to be talking to you about why I think fatherhood is important. First, let me say that I'm the father of 8. We have a blended family. I've been married for 13 years to my beautiful wife. To me, fatherhood is important because we really validate the value of our children. If we say that our children are great, our children take that as the gospel. And so I think children, when they get that embrace, that physical touch, that physical love and nurturance from their father, I think it just goes leaps and bounds into their confidence, into their self-esteem, into their self-worth, because I really think that we define our children's value. Mothers are great cheerleaders, but I think we're the validators as fathers, and there's no minimization between a mother and a father. We both should be equal in raising our children. And being a father is not about money. It's not about child support. Being a father is about time. It's about putting that time into your children. It's about putting that love into your children. Every father that I've ever talked to over the years, the one thing I always tell them is don't get caught up with the child support argument, the child support debate, because you'll never win. When you love your children, when you have quality access to your children, when you spend time with your children, there's no amount of money that's too much to show your appreciation for your child. The Milwaukee Fatherhood Initiative and the summit actually supports fathers really putting that time in and within the 2-day summit. And that's really kind of what it's been centered around. The different services that are offered, whether it's driver's license recovery, helping individuals find jobs, or working and helping them with their child support issues that they may have, that really is just the tip of the iceberg. When it's all said and done, every man that comes to the Fatherhood Summit over the last 11 years has come because they truly have a love and an appreciation for their children.